Hello, welcome to Sim.bc, where right now it's 18:31 and I have some dishes. No, I do not. I have some wash in a washing machine that I'm going to take in about 30 minutes, give or take, right? So I kind of need to get this wrapped up. But of course we're going to wrap it up. Of course it's going to be great. And of course it's going to be the best thing ever. Because today is what? Today is Saturday. And what does Saturday really imply? Well, it kind of implies that we're taking all of the interesting news over the last week or so, I might add, and we compile them and we talk about the most interesting things that have happened, or at least to me, right? The things that struck my eye the most during this week. And I hear you say it. What do I hear you say? I hear you say it's SNR. Oh no, it's the SNR. It's the Saturday News Recap. Do we have a high five for that or what? It's the Saturday News bloody Recap. It's the internet's absolute favorite show. Here's on my little corner of the internet. As usual, I'm going to go through, as I said before, the topics of conversation or the topics of news that I thought and deemed to be the most interesting and kind of stuck out to me. So that, without any further ado, is what we are going to do. I have 3 international news for you and 1 small little news piece surrounding what's happened in my life. As always, I know that you're really interested in the last one, but we're obviously going to start with the international news because that's unfortunately appealing to the broader audience. And the first one is we're going to talk about Google's diversity figures show little change. I challenge you, please tell me, what is diversity? I mean, really, we've been talking about it for days. I've been talking about it for days because it's something that I deem to be very interesting. What is actually diversity? And now it got up in the news, and I was like, interesting. Google's diversity figures show little change. Okay, let's read into this, shall we? A new report from Google has revealed that little has changed despite a commitment to increasing diversity among staff employed by the tech giant. Now, have you come up with what diversity actually is? Is diversity, as some imply, observed diversity, where you can definitely see that this is a diverse company because people look and dress differently. Is that diversity? Or is diversity that we employ whoever do we want because we're looking at intellectual diversity and how they differ from each other when it comes to topic of a conversation? I'm just going to say the media is probably going to take the former definition of what diversity actually is. As can be seen here, overall, nearly 70% of Google's staff were men, as has been the case since 2014. In the US, almost 90% were white or Asian, 2.5% were black, and 3.6% Latin American. We do not have to continue with this news piece in order to get the understanding of that. Well, with this news article, what this media, what this tech giant is deeming to be actual diversity is what I would argue to be observed diversity. And that is, of course, the diversity that you can see, the diversity that you can actually market, and more importantly, the diversity that media can go to attack at. Now, I know, before you get all up in arms, that there is a stark difference, there is a strong difference, a huge difference between, employing people because we need to and trying to avoid discrimination. I totally agree. Of course we should try to avoid discrimination to the best of our ability. However, we shouldn't discriminate for intellectual diversity based on that somebody looks different, because that's also discrimination. It's just not a discrimination against a minority. However, we can all say that we're all people, so who really gives a shit, right? But obviously what they're trying to point out in this article is that, well, Google, they haven't really changed that much when it comes to diversity. They haven't really employed more people who look different. And we argued that to be a problem. Now, obviously, Google is just one of the many cases. This is just one of many articles attacking huge multinational corporations for lack of diversity. And of course, I understand that, especially the gender, I would argue personally, but I'm a bit old-fashioned. that a gender I would like to have closer to 50-50, right? And that's just because and solely based on the assumption that men and women view things differently. As I said, that's a very old-fashioned statement. It's absolutely not correct in most of the times. I would argue that men and women view things almost the same, even though that people get really mad when you say that. But I'm living in an optimistic world. I would say that mostly men and women view things the same because, well, we're the same. The only thing that's really different is the biology and so on and so forth. Now, I understand that I'm living in Sweden. That's kind of a privileged perspective to have, and that is not the case all over the world, which implies that Google, who is a multinational corporation, should also employ 50-50, closer to a 50-50 split of the genders. I can fully support that because, as I said, there's a gender thing, right? Different perspectives, I get that. However, they're also going to talk about Black, Latin American, Asian, and white people. Let me just say, Google is a multinational corporation. Yes, we're all on the same page. And we can say X company, right? We can just say any given multinational corporation that stems from a particular country will probably have a majority of their workers from that country. And that's not the same as saying that they're not representing that country in the amount of, what should we say, races that are in that country. They're probably people who, well, unfortunately, you know, what you would say, hire because people look the same as them. They argue the same as them, and they feel the same as them, right? You tend to want to have people that are similar to you, which I would argue is a huge problem when it comes to intellectual diversity, because it probably means that you won't hire someone who is disagreeing with you, which is a problem. I would say hire them directly because that's the perspective that you want. However, people are so focused on hiring people that look different that they don't really, pay attention to that. But that's probably the reason for why there are so many white people, so to say, quote-unquote white people, because there's probably a wider range of different white people as well that want to be, voiced, I guess, and don't want to be categorized as just white people, even though I would say it doesn't really matter what skin color you do have. And isn't this a kind of an issue to talk about it to begin with? Of course not. It's good to talk about it. But there seems to be a very small, there seems to be a distinguished and significant majority, if you get what I'm saying, in the company of especially Blacks and Latin Americans. However, how do you measure this? Because, for instance, if it's someone who is Latin American but lives in the US, are they considered, Americans? And if so, did they just assume that they were white because they're not? There's so many things that can be taken into consideration when you're talking statistics. Obviously, that was probably a very, very bad example. I understand that. But there are some issues that we need to talk about, right? As for instance, discrimination against minorities. Kind of a problem? Yes. Should it be addressed? Yes. However, is media right now targeting the right kind of problems? I would still argue no. Not that this isn't an issue that should be voiced. It is, because as I argued in my video about absurd and real diversity, so to say, we kind of need to have a workplace where people feel that they're represented, a bit like identity politics. We need to have people who look, dress, and sound different, because that means that when we're employing people will be more likely to feel at home at our company if they feel like someone else is looking, sounding, and being the same as them. Now, that's obviously a really bad mentality to have, but it's true nonetheless. I would argue, can't we just hire people and they should feel at home no matter what people who are already in the company looks like, so that we can fully express ourselves in the terms of intellectual diversity? No, we can't, okay? But I still think that that's the way we should do it. Anyway, I'm rambling on. I'm probably arguing against myself at some point as well. Let's move on. Two other things that has happened this week is that, and these two things has been covered so in depth, probably really up until this point, that I can probably not add anything to it. But the World Cup of 2018 has started, the World Cup in football. It's apparently some big thing. I myself is completely outside of the sphere, so I didn't even know it started, Didn't even know it was in Russia. That's how much of outside of the boundaries I am when it comes to football and sports in general. So I was like, well, good for them that it started, right? Good revenue stream. Lots of people going into Russia. That's good. 2 thumbs fresh. It's good for the economy, probably, depending on how you view it. Is it good for the corporate social responsibility of the companies that are actually building all the stages? Or are they going to be abandoned? Can we have some form of sports CSR integrated with this? Does it actually exist, that perspective? Actually, I had a couple of friends or colleagues, I don't know how I'm going to refer to them now that we actually graduated, that wrote about sports organizations and CSR and came to the conclusion, if I remember correctly, which I might or might not do, so don't quote me on this, right, that there were little internal motivation but lots of external motivation for CSR when it comes to sports organizations, or it was the other way around. I don't really remember what I said 5 seconds ago, but what I meant to say was that there were little external motivation, probably the opposite to what I said, but that's probably what they told. Anyway, doesn't really matter. So I thought it was kind of interesting to look at the football from that perspective, right? How is the corporate social responsibility actually implied in the World FIFA Cup, right? It's kind of interesting to look at. Not that I'm going to go in depth with that, because there's probably people out there who's covering that who are more qualified to do so than I am. So let's move on to the third piece of international news that's kind of big, that's yet again been covered extensively, at least by the people that I follow, right? On YouTube and so on and so forth. So I know that there is coverage out there. If you don't find it, well, just literally Google the words. It's gonna come up. And when I say Google the words, I mean one number and one letter, and that is of course E3. That's correct. A huge outlet where they're putting out new games, concepts for new games, concepts for new designs, teasing new games. All in all, it's just games, bloody games. We have everything from EA to Bethesda to Microsoft to Sony to Nintendo. Everyone is bloody there, and they're releasing some new, interesting, and exciting stuff. One of which is Super Smash Bros. For the Nintendo Switch, which I am really interested in. But that's probably as much as I'm going to cover by that, because there has been, as I said, lots and lots and lots of coverage about E3. Even the people who are covering it in depth as a job here on YouTube or on Twitch are saying that, well, it's kind of, sad that I'm going to cover this because there's so many people who already covered it. And those are the people who are the most current at the thing, and even they say that there are other people who have done it. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to inform you, if you for some reason didn't know, that the World Cup in football has been announced and started. Has started. And E3 has been last weekend, I guess. Like Saturday to Friday, maybe to Tuesday. I'm not that into it, right? I'm kind of into it, semi into it. More into it than I am to the football, but not that into it. Anyway. That was all for the international news for this week. Now I'm going to move you closer to something that has been happening in my life. And for it, I need some props. So just give me like 1, 2, maybe even the 3 seconds. And let me show you this. This is the Samsung Gear VR. I always thought it was kind of awesome because it's light, it's nice. The only problem is, right? The only problem is, from my, in my case, is that the pixel density on the screen inside this thing isn't the best. Probably because it's based on a phone. It's really good considering it's from a phone, but it's not the best. So what I've gone and done is that I've upgraded myself. And I know it now. I know. It's been out for years. Yeah, it's probably 2016. It's been out for years, but I haven't just gotten around to do it, to buy it. Why? Well, because I thought I needed a TV to actually use it. But then it turns out you can actually use this without the TV, or at least the rumors are such. Haven't tried it out yet by myself, but I'm going to, in due time. And that is, of course, the PlayStation VR headset that I can do nothing else than wreck a bloody man. It's amazing. It fits well. It sounds well. It is well. It's a bit big now that I'm looking at it, but it's so comfortable and it works so well with all your games, and you don't even have to have VR games in order to utilize it. As I said, you can use this as your secondary TV screen, which is a bloody amazing. I must say, it's really cool that you can use this instead of the TV. I can shut off the TV and just use this, which probably, hopefully, will make my medical bill. Why I'm saying my medical bills. Hopefully those will go down too, because I'm gonna stay indoors more. But my electricity bills are probably gonna go down since I'm using this and not the TV, the television. which is amazing. And the best thing about this is that now I can travel with it just like with the Switch. Yes, I can take that with me to France if I so do want to, which is going to be 2 thumbs fresh. And to end on this, I would just like to say that I'm amazed, right, about how all of this technology works, how you can interact with your controller or PlayStation Move Sticks, even though I don't have them, but I've tried them before, in PlayStation VR, how it all works. It's a bloody amazing. However, I would still like to say that the Switch, just the mentality of being able to have both a semi-Game Boy and a home console, is still taking the lead in gaming tech development, so to say, hardware out there. I'm still considering the Switch to be the outstandingly the #1 hardware that I've ever bought in my entire life. And I would argue that the sensation of being able to do this, you know, in your TV, so it goes up on the TV and now it's back on the screen, goes up on the TV, back on the screen. It's more amazing than the PlayStation VR, but it's a close second. Anyway, mates, that's my ranking of things you didn't even care about. Have a nice one, and I'll see you tomorrow with some things that I've already planned for once. Bye.